Well, plenty of changes at the Saints over summer, particularly in the coaching staff, and one of the changes is the acquisition of Darren Jolly as our Rucks coach. Darren, welcome to the Saints. I understand it's a part-time role, working 2 days a week with the club. How are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it's been probably a really good experience for me. Certainly coming off playing fresh from last year, and doing the things that the young ruckmen are doing now. I've had 13 years of doing that, so for me to come here and I suppose pass on my wisdom and my experience to the young guys here is something that certainly I enjoy doing.
Obviously, footy evolves fairly quickly over time. How important do you think it is to have someone fairly contemporary, fairly recently out of the game on a club's coaching staff?
Well, I think it helps certainly with the way the game's played at the moment, and having someone who's experienced the rule changes and how different opponents who are still playing, how they play, their strengths and weaknesses, certainly because our guys have only played a handful of games between them, so for someone who's just sort of recently finished last year, coming in and having that experience and knowledge certainly helps.
There was a bit of talk leading up to the rookie draft that you might be in the mix for a spot there. I mean, how quickly did you move on from the hopes there to actually realising that the future was in a coaching capacity?
Well, geez, it ended pretty quick, to be honest. Look, after the initial disappointment that footy was over completely for me, we reflected on my career and then just sort of sat down with my wife and talked about what we needed to do and where we wanted to go, and certainly the opportunity here came up, and I jumped at it.
Obviously Collingwood's your most recent club, but there were a couple others as well. Do you think that also adds a little bit to the strings to your bow, that you have a few different clubs background, you have different organisations of intellectual property that you could probably bring to the Saints?
Absolutely, and not only that is I suppose how they operated and the fantastic leaders and players that were involved with those clubs, and I've been very lucky and fortunate to be at two fantastic clubs in Sydney and Collingwood, and certainly Melbourne starting. I was probably a bit young and fresh then, but certainly my eyes opened up once I got to Sydney, and seeing how they operate and successful teams and the certain things that they do was fantastic for me to learn, and certainly I've been able to pass on a couple little things, little tips here and there.
You would have played a lot of footy against the Saints in your time. What were your perceptions of the club from an outsider looking in?
Well, you're almost grand finalist in that's 2010. Just a very unlucky bounce of the ball. I thought certainly back then in those years, super competitive. It was certainly under Ross Lyon. It was really contested style of footy, and that was always hard to play against because you're in for a slog. I suppose over the years, we've had a lot of change, and a lot of young guys have come in, and that new breed and that new fold of players that are coming through. So it's exciting. Certainly being out here and seeing them train, full of enthusiasm and youth, which brings a certain freshness to the group. Certainly after the setbacks they've had over the few years, I think this year certainly you're going to see some exciting players come through.
And what about yourself? Are you planning to have a run with a local club or anything like that, or is the footy completely over and done with for you?
No. I plan to play a few games with some mates back home. Nothing over the top. Probably just 4 or 5 games for the year, just to have a bit of a laugh and muck around with them.
Yeah. Back home being the Ballarat League?
Back home at Lexington. My mate's still there, so I'll be running around for Lexington a few games.
Yeah. The Saints coaching staff, mentioned earlier, there have been a few changes. Any of the guys that you've worked with before, and if not, what are your perceptions of the team we've got down here?
I haven't worked with any of the coaches before. A couple of the sports science guys I've had over the years at different clubs, but certainly the wealth of knowledge that they have is fantastic. Under Richo, they're all sort of new and bonding together, so the meetings that I've sat in on, and I suppose being out here and being able to see firsthand how they operate with my coach's hat on, part-time coaches being that is pleasing. They're on the right track and they're on the right table, as to speak. But I suppose being out here and seeing how it all works. You know, I think as a player, you sort of just get in the routine of running around and doing what you're told, and being able to see how it all works has been really interesting.
It's a fairly young ruck department, and obviously a fairly big loss off-season with Ben McAvoy going to Hawthorn. What do you make of the ruck stocks that the Saints have in place at the moment?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, they're young and they're fresh. You know, I think, as I said, between them, they would have only played a handful of games. So that's exciting that the club's got some youth that they can build and mould into the player that, you know, hopefully is here for 200 games. Certainly Ben was fantastic for the Saints, and I had some great battles against Ben, and he was a really tough ruckman to play against. I think I've only played against maybe Billy once over my time, so it just goes to show that they're really, I suppose, inexperienced to a point, but I've been able to have my way with them a few times this pre-season and really give them a lesson in what it's going to take to make it as a ruckman. So having young guys who are just sponges, they want to learn, is great.
All right, well, thanks for the chat, Darren.
No worries, cheers.